Mark Webber. Actor Mark Webber, known for his part in the film Scott Pilgrim vs. the World, took to social media back in 2019, and he had some harsh words for TV network ABC after he was fired from their show Stumptown. At the time, Stumptown had just been picked up by the network and the production was getting underway, with Mark being cast in a lead role as the best friend and love interest opposite Colby Smolder's character Dax, whom the show is centered around. Soon after production started, Mark was reportedly fired from the show, and the actor said that the studio had let him go because he wasn't, quote, handsome enough for the executives. In response to his unemployment, he took to Twitter to blast the network, calling their choice degrading, and in one of his many tweets slamming ABC, he said, quote, "Look, I'm a straight white male, so I know my journey has been way less painful in this warped industry, but I'm being recast in a television show because I'm not handsome enough for the executives. It's important for me to share the real pain we endure in this industry," end quote. He also spoke out about how the industry cares so much about the appearances of their stars, saying how things really need to be changed. At number 9, Robert Downey Jr. We all know that Robert Downey Jr. is one of the most successful actors in Hollywood, coming from his rise to fame after hitting rock bottom in the past. After rebuilding his career, he really could have had any role he wanted because he's such a big name in the industry, but it seems as though even the most successful actors can still get fired. Robert was actually fired from the set of the movie Gravity after a last-minute decision was made to recast him. We know that the 2013 film Gravity stars George Clooney as a leading male, but that role was first given to RDJ. After a few days of filming, the director decided that Robert was not suited to play this role. When speaking out about the recast, the film's director said, quote, "Robert is incredibly talented, but the technological aspect of the movie presented a big obstacle to his style of acting," end quote. Clooney soon replaced Robert and the film went on to be a huge success, but I wonder how different things would have been without the recast.
At number 10, Piers Morgan. I know that we as humans are bound to mess up sometimes, but there's no excuse for being overly critical and mean to another person, because clearly it can have its consequences, like how Piers Morgan lost his job due to the rude comments that he made on TV. Piers had a lot to say after Meghan Markle and Prince Harry's interview with Oprah. Like many others, Piers was surprised at what was said during the interview, but he took some of the information shared in the interview and used it as hateful fuel that inevitably came back to bite him. During the interview, Meghan Markle opened up about her mental health and how it was affected being part of the royal family, saying that there was once a point after marrying into the family that she wanted to take her own life. Piers spoke about this on air of Good Morning Britain, and he said that he, quote, "didn't believe a word that she said." After Piers made those and a handful of other harsh comments, he started to face massive backlash from all sides, as people said that his comments on Meghan's mental health were diminishing and disrespectful. The studio he worked for, as well as Piers himself, started receiving harsh comments, and so Piers actually left his position at Good Morning Britain. He was, in a way, fired from his job, but he decided to pull the plug himself, I guess, to make him seem like the bigger person. He has since refused to apologize, and since nobody wants to work with him after all this drama, it could be that his career is finished now. At number 9, Megyn Kelly. Journalist Megyn Kelly once had her own show called Megyn Kelly Today, but after facing a scandal, her show was cancelled by the network, effectively firing her from her job. This scandal all started when Megyn defended wearing blackface at Halloween on her morning show, where she said, quote, "When I was a kid, that was okay, just as long as you were dressing as a character." Even though she tried to apologize for her remarks, the network just didn't want to take any more risks with Megyn over fears that this would reflect badly on the company, so Megyn was fired and her show was cancelled.
And at number 10, Lily Singh. When it was announced that YouTuber Lily Singh got her own late night show with NBC, the internet was set ablaze because this was a massive step for YouTubers and influencers breaking into mainstream media. But after the show aired, it was clear it was too big of a step for Lily and that she was not a natural when it came to hosting a show. After struggling through the first season, the show was picked up again for a second, but after the second season was proved to be no more interesting than the first, it was cancelled by the network. When the series premiered in 2019, Singh became the first woman in more than 30 years and the first LGBTQ person to ever host a late-night program on a major network. Lily announced the cancellation in a statement where she thanked NBC and her fans and said it's only the beginning for her career in TV. She's apparently made a production deal with UTA as well as a comedy project with Netflix. And at number 9, Bill O'Reilly. Bill O'Reilly was one of the people who put Fox News on the map and helped it to become the top of the ratings chart. But he was fired after multiple allegations of misconduct against women at the studio came to light. At first, the network stood by their star, but then 80 companies decided to boycott putting ads on the network, which forced their hand. At the time, Fox News was going through a massive transformation, losing another one of its biggest stars, Megyn Kelly, after she stood by fellow host Gretchen Carlson for coming out against her at the network. O'Reilly never admitted to any wrongdoings, and following his firing, he told Today, quote, "If you look at the totality, this was a hit job, a political and financial hit job. blaming left-wing organizations for his demise.
At number 8, Ryan Gosling. Ryan Gosling is one of Hollywood's most famous actors, but he is also someone who's experienced getting fired, and it happened very early on in his career. Back in the 90s, Ryan was part of the Mickey Mouse Club alongside stars like Justin Timberlake, Christina Aguilera, and Britney Spears, but after some drama on set, Ryan got fired from Disney. Ryan didn't stick around too long on the show, and in an interview in 2008, Ryan opened up about his 2 years on the Disney Channel, where he revealed that things didn't work out well between him and the studio. The actor revealed that the producers from the Disney Channel show thought that Ryan had a bit of an attitude problem and was seen as a bad influence on the other kids. The actor also went on to say that he was apparently considered to be such a menace to the other kids that the mothers of his co-stars went to execs to complain about his behavior. The studio eventually decided that Ryan wasn't Disney material because of his behavior, and he was soon let go. At number 7, Adrienne Bailon. Speaking of another former Disney star, the Cheetah Girls actress Adrienne Bailon is another celebrity who's been fired from the studio. The Cheetah Girls films were another set of hit films from the Disney Channel, and obviously because of the film's huge success and the fan base that it created, the film stars had to conform to the harsh standards that other Disney stars had to. After making 3 films with Disney, Adrienne Bailon decided that she didn't want to stay in her Disney bubble forever and was looking to branch out from Disney and step into roles that were more suited for her age. Being in her 20s at the time, she wanted to step away from these films, and so to do that, she came up with a plan to end her contract. Adrienne allegedly ended up leaking her own private photos, causing a stir online and in the media. This bad press was obviously not good for Disney, and so they were forced to let her go. It did hurt her career a little bit, but she achieved the outcome that she was looking for, and she got to end her contract with Disney. At number 6, Kuma the dog. Now, you're probably going to think that this one is a bit of a stretch because he's not a celebrity in the traditional sense, but he helped sell a lot for Disney and he got fired in the end, so I figured I needed to tell his story. I'm not sure how many of you would be familiar with the show Dog with a Blog, but for those who may be unfamiliar, the title says it all. It's a Disney Channel show about a family dog who wrote a blog. To get the show up and running, the studio needed to cast a dog to do stunts and tricks for the camera, but apparently there came a scandal between the dog who was originally cast and the dog who actually starred in the show. When the role was first cast, the part went to a performing dog named Kuma. Kuma was in all of the promotional material, the photos, and the first 5 episodes of the show. He was the best fit for the role because of his experience, but all of a sudden his owner got a notice saying that they were fired, and it was for an insane reason. Before this, Kuma's owner had been raising concerns over her dog's well-being on set, saying that Kuma had been overworked, having to be on for 12 to 14 hours a day. The stress of working affected Kuma so much that he developed health issues, and on top of that, the owner claimed that they were being underpaid for their work. This all ended when Kuma was fired and replaced by another, less experienced dog, so that they didn't have to adjust the rules and place any new guidelines in place for the animal's safety. At number 5, Bella Thorne. Bella Thorne rose to fame through her time on the Disney Channel and starring in the show Shake It Up, but like many other former Disney stars, Bella began to crack under pressure of conforming herself to Disney standards, and it resulted in her almost getting fired. Almost. She was given so many warnings that she really feared for her job at one point, so things were really serious. Because Disney stars like Bella are asked to conform to a specific brand image, whenever Bella would dress in something that the company considered too revealing, like a crop top or a bikini, some executives got really upset and they reprimanded her. All Bella wanted to do was be herself, but instead she had to wear company-approved clothing and even speak in a higher register to sound more innocent. Dumb. Bella kept on pushing until they were fed up with her, and they were so close to firing her. Bella finally pulled the plug on her Disney contract and left the company to be more herself, but her career was in serious jeopardy for a while there. At number 4, Megan Fox. Megan Fox had been in a few pretty successful films before being cast in the Transformers films, but after the success of this franchise, she was launched into fame. At least that's until things came crashing down after getting fired from her role and facing a lot of backlash because of it. When she was fired from Transformers, Michael Bay said that the decision came after she was, quote, a nightmare to work with. What really happened is that Megan made a comment about Michael Bay's behavior on set, commenting on how strict he was and comparing him to a really bad guy whose name cannot be said online, but I'm pretty sure you catch my drift. On top of everything, when fellow director Steven Spielberg caught wind of these comments, he advised Bae to fire her, and that is exactly what happened. Megyn lost her job and gained a reputation of being hard to work with, which followed her for many years. She was cast in a pretty negative light for a long time, but she's happy living her truth, not caring about what Hollywood has to say about her. At number 3, Natalie Portman. Are you familiar with the 1996 film Romeo and Juliet? If you are, then you would recall that the film stars Leonardo DiCaprio and Claire Danes, but it turns out that Claire wasn't the first pick for the role and someone had to be fired in order for her to get the part. Originally, Natalie Portman was cast to play the role of Juliet. At the time, Natalie was 13 years old, and though that is canonically how old Juliet was in the original Shakespeare play, the film's executives thought it would be a little too weird if the 13-year-old Natalie starred in the film alongside a 21-year-old Leo. Natalie spoke out about getting fired from the film years later in an interview where she said, quote, "It was really disappointing, but I wouldn't have wanted to be in a movie and have it look wrong." End quote. The decision was made in the film's best interest, and Natalie is okay with being fired back then, but it still must have been devastating to get booted from the production, especially as someone just starting out in the industry. At number 2, Eric Stoltz. Sometimes when people cast a role in a Hollywood production, they can later decide that whoever has been hired isn't really the best fit. This is what happened during the production of Back to the Future, as a sudden casting change left someone getting fired. The role of Marty McFly in the film originally went to actor Eric Stoltz, and they had filmed a substantial amount of footage with Eric as the leading man, but later the filmmakers reviewed the footage and decided that he just wasn't fit for the role. The executives thought that Eric's portrayal of the character was a little too serious, and they really wanted Marty to be a little more laid back and goofy, so they needed someone to fit that style. They ended up firing Eric and brought in Michael J. Fox to fill the role, reshooting many of the scenes that Eric had previously done. Though the final cut of the film is mostly Michael's work, it is believed that a few of Eric's scenes made it in, so that's a little fun Easter egg to look for next time you watch Back to the Future. And finally, at number 1, Christian Bale. The 2000 movie American Psycho stars actor Christian Bale as Patrick Bateman, and I'm sure we can all agree that he absolutely crushed this role, but there was once a chance that he wouldn't have even been able to play the part. You see, when the movie was first being cast, the producer's first choice for the role of Patrick Bateman was actually Leonardo DiCaprio, and even though they had already given the part to Christian Bale, they ended up firing the actor in order to go with Leo instead. Christian was then out of a job, but not for long, because Leo ended up having to drop out of the production because he was warned that this film would have had a negative impact on his career because of the harsh content. That was good news for Bale, as he was rehired for the role, and it was like nothing had even happened in the first place.
At number 8, Gene Simmons. Gene Simmons is certainly someone with little or no filter when it comes to his words and actions. He's an outlandish guy with a lot of energy, and so sometimes when he gets passionate or heated, then he can go off the rails a bit, and that can come back to bite him, as it resulted in him losing his job with Fox. At one point, the singer was a Fox favorite, making regular appearances on their programming where they would discuss hot topics in the world and would share their opinions on things. They seemed to really like him and enjoyed having him on their talk show, but after causing a stir at a meeting with Fox and making some crude comments towards some of the other staff members, Gene was banned for life and was fired from their show. Some of the things that Gene said to some women at the network got leaked, and it made the studio look bad, so they just had to let him go. In this day and age, making comments like that is sure to get you in some serious trouble, and for a celebrity, that can never be good because that can cost you your entire career, so Fox just had to save their own butts and had to get rid of the problem at hand. At number 7, Adrien Brody. Adrien Brody is a super successful actor, but after a scandal while hosting Saturday Night Live in 2003, his potential hosting career began and ended all in one night. When Adrien was hired to host SNL one evening, one of the tasks he was given that night was introducing the musical guest for the evening. Seems like a pretty simple enough task, but he still managed to mess it up. On the night that Adrien was hosting, the musical guest turned out to be Sean Paul, and Adrien saw this as the perfect opportunity to introduce Sean in an interesting way, to say the least. When it came down to announcing Sean's performance, Adrien came out dressed in fake dreadlocks and sporting a Jamaican accent. His bit was called out and was seen as offensive and uncalled for, as he went completely off script to do this bit, but no one found it funny in the slightest.
Man, Jamaica, man, you know, Rastafari, you got the whole family in the house, me got Sean Peter, you got Sean Paul, you got Sean Mary.
Because this was such an epic and controversial fail, the actor was subsequently fired and banned from coming back on the show. He faced a lot of backlash that hurt his image for a while, but clearly he's bounced back since then. At number 6, Jenny Slate. The first day at a new job is always a very stressful one. There's a lot of pressure to do well and start to fit into your new work environment, so usually employers forgive any kind of minor mistakes, but for comedian Jenny Slate, the mistake that she made on her first day was a bit of a doozy and she ended up getting fired for it. Back in 2009, during her first performance as a cast member on the show, Jenny got the chance to perform one of the sketches that she wrote. She knew the bit like the back of her hand, or at least she thought she did, because when she went to go say one of her lines, she accidentally switched up one of the words and dropped an accidental F-bomb in its place. We all know that on network television, especially on talk shows like this, having adult language is a serious no-no, and when Jenny messed up, it just was not good for her at all. After that night, Jenny just struggled to fit the show's vibe, at least that's what she went on to say. The F-bomb combined with her other behind-the-scenes stuff caused her to get fired from one of the most famous shows on TV, and that definitely held her back in the comedy world for a little while, but clearly not forever. At number 5, Alec Baldwin. Back in 2013, Alec Baldwin became the host of a late-night talk show called Up Late with Alec Baldwin on MSNBC. But his career as a talk show host was very short-lived, as the show was promptly cancelled after just 5 episodes because Alex landed himself in a scandal that got him fired from the network. Alec had been exposed for getting into a heated brawl with paparazzi, where he went on a bit of a homophobic rant, which, as you can imagine, made Alec as well as the network look bad. Luckily for him, the only thing that really took a beating was his late-night career, since his acting career remained relatively steady after this scandal. He got lucky that he only got fired from one job and not all of them. At number 4, Leah Remini. Actress Leah Remini, known for her work on sitcoms like The King of Queens and Kevin Can Wait, was also a host on the talk show The Talk, but that career was pretty short-lived because she just didn't mesh well with her fellow co-hosts. In an interview with Howard Stern, Leah talked about how she was fired from the show because, quote, she refused to keep her mouth shut. Leah said that she was just doing what she thought was right for her on the show, but the producers thought differently, and this led to her losing her job. Her career still remained intact after being let go from the show though, so things certainly could have been worse for the actress. We just know that she might not be invited to be a talk show host again anytime soon. At number 3, Charles Rocket. Between 1980 and 1981, SNL seemed to be on its way out, despite having been one of the biggest shows on TV. This all came after there were changes in staff, and this caused some drama because much of the cast weren't happy with the new changes being put in place. Because of this seemingly controversial change, much of the original cast of the show left, leading the new producer to have to rehire a brand new cast. This was great for new up-and-coming comedians because it gave new people new opportunities, but it also made others lose everything they worked for. Comedian Charles Rocket was one cast member who had their career destroyed on the show after he dropped an F-bomb during a skit. The comedian was closing out the show when he spoke some adult language, and since this is a huge no-no, he got reprimanded for it, and it caused him as well as a handful of others to get fired from the show. So he not only got himself fired, but many other cast and crew members as well, greatly affecting a lot of careers. At number 2, Ellen. Now I know you guys are gonna head into the comments right now and say, well, Ellen didn't get fired, and I know that. But she did kind of fire herself when she announced that she would be ending her show. She's laying herself off because she's taking away her own job. Last year in 2020, we watched the comedian and talk show host fall rapidly from grace as allegation after allegation came out, painting her as a nightmare to work with, among other things. She faced so much backlash for months for things like the treatment of her staff, her comments about lockdown, and the Black Lives Matter movement. Because of the events of last year, she lost a lot of credibility and respect in the industry, and her show lost a lot of ratings and advertisers as well, leading to her making the decision to end her talk show after so many years. So yeah, no one officially fired her, but she kind of just fired herself. And finally, at number 1, Sharon Osbourne. Talk show host Sharon Osbourne faced a lot of backlash a few months ago after making comments about Meghan Markle and Prince Harry. Sharon and her former co-host Cheryl Underwood got into a heated argument surrounding Piers Morgan's remarks about Meghan Markle. During this feud, Sharon backed up some of Pierce's comments about Meghan's mental health, and this really frustrated a lot of people because many felt as though what was being said was going a little too far. As a result of the remarks that Sharon made, she was called a racist, and a number of other accusations came out about how she's used various slurs in the past when talking about her other co-hosts on the show. As a result of this, the network she worked for launched an internal investigation to look into the allegations against Sharon, and it all ended with Sharon being let go from the show.
In at number 8, Wendy Williams. Wendy Williams got fired from another gig before she got the coveted position of having her own show. She used to work for radio station Hot 97, where she had her own radio show, and she would talk about hot topics in Hollywood. But in usual Wendy fashion, she took it too far and paid the ultimate price. Wendy decided to post photos of Diddy on the beach when he was not wearing any clothes, if you catch my drift. And you could see everything in these photos. The station was obviously not happy with this, and she was suspended for the action, along with making a permanent enemy out of Diddy. After some time, the network decided to cut their losses and fire her. And after this, Wendy did not stay down for long, and she ended up landing her own daytime show on network TV. Talk about a comeback. Although due to health concerns, Wendy is no longer hosting the show, and it will be overtaken by the Sherri Shepherd Show. And at number 7, Matt Lauer. In 2017, NBC was at the center of a huge scandal when they suspended broadcaster Matt Lauer only minutes before he was set to go live on air. Instead of the usual Lauer and Savannah Guthrie starring the broadcast, it was instead Guthrie and Hoda Khattab. The women started the broadcast with transparency, sharing an internal memo that had been sent out just minutes before, announcing the suspension of Lauer. In this memo, it claims that multiple allegations had been made that Lauer engaged in inappropriate conduct with other NBC employees. These incidents started at the 2014 Sochi Olympics and apparently continued when the women returned back from the trip. In the statement, NBC chairman admitted that there was reason to believe these were not isolated incidents. Lauer issued his own statement days later, admitting to the acts. He was then fired by the network and has not worked since. And at number 6, Sharon Osbourne. Sharon Osbourne was fired from her hosting gig on The Talk after she got into a heated debate with fellow host Cheryl Underwood while speaking about her good friend Piers Morgan. Morgan got tons of backlash after making some nasty comments about Meghan Markle and her interview with Oprah. Then the women of The Talk discussed the incident, and Osbourne took her friend's side. After this, it was announced that Osbourne was let go from the show. CBS said in a statement that her behavior, quote, did not align with our values. When speaking about her firing with Bill Maher, she said, quote, I'm angry, I'm hurt, I've been called so many things in my life, but a racist is not one I will take. Osbourne continued, quote, she's entitled to her opinion, Piers is entitled to his, and that's what it's all about. Disagreeing with someone does not make you a racist in my book. A lot of Sharon's fans disagreed with her firing, and the ratings of the show plummeted after she left. Halfway number 5, Chris Cuomo. CNN's Chris Cuomo has officially been fired from his network after an investigation uncovered the anchor helped his brother, disgraced Governor Andrew Cuomo, during his scandal. Andrew Cuomo's crimes include government corruption and sexual misconduct. Earlier, they announced he was going to be suspended, barring the results of the investigation, but partway through, they uncovered evidence to fire him. CNN writes, quote, while in the process of that review, additional information had come to light. Despite the termination, we will investigate as appropriate. This all came on the heels of an investigation by the New York Attorney General's office, which suggested that he was heavily involved in his brother's scandal. Following his termination, reports are coming out that Chris was accused of sexual harassment, and that's part of the reason for his termination. So it's clear no network will want to touch him now. And at number 4, Rush Limbaugh. The late Rush Limbaugh was a radio giant and had the biggest radio show in the country for many years. But before he became known for his own show, he was a football commentator for ESPN that ended up getting fired. During his stint as a football analyst on ESPN's Sunday NFL Countdown in 2003, he was commentating on quarterback Donovan McNabb and said, quote, the media has been very serious that a black quarterback do well. There is little hope invested in McNabb, and he has a lot of credit for the performances of his team that he didn't deserve. The defense carried this team. After the comments, he got tons of backlash considering they were clearly racially charged, and Limbaugh was only supposed to be speaking about the performance of these athletes. In the end, he decided to resign from the position, I'm sure after some long talks with the network. He said in a statement, quote, the great people at ESPN did not want to deal with this kind of reaction. After leaving that gig, he started up his own radio show called The Rush Limbaugh Show, and it was a huge hit right up until he passed away. And at number 3, Mike Richards. After the passing of legendary Jeopardy host Alex Trebek, Mike Richards stepped in as one of the potential frontrunners to replace him as host. Richards had been an executive producer on the show for years prior and decided to put his hat in the ring to host when the position became available. However, that stint did not last, and shortly after Richards was announced as the new host, problematic behavior from his past started to resurface. These allegations were regarding Richards' behavior and comments towards women and minorities. Following the backlash, he was not only fired as host, but he was also fired from his executive producer position. The show released a statement saying, quote, we had hoped that when Mike stepped down from the host position at Jeopardy, it would have minimized the disruption and internal difficulties we have all experienced these last few weeks. That clearly has not happened. And at number 2, Nick Cannon. Nick Cannon was fired from many of his shows and hosting gigs after he went on a strange anti-Semitic rant. In June of 2020, Nick Cannon was interviewing Professor Griff, who has a history of making anti-Semitic comments. During this interview, Cannon went on a bizarre rant calling Jewish and white people savages. At one point he said, quote, the people that don't have melanin are a little less. Adding, quote, they're acting as animals, so they're the ones that are actually closer to animals. They're the ones that are actually the true savages. After Cannon did not apologize for the comments, Viacom CBS cut ties with Cannon. He was fired from Wild 'N Out, an improv series that he had hosted and starred in for 15 seasons. Cannon has also hosted other shows for Viacom-CBS-owned Nickelodeon channel over more than 20 years and was named chairman of spin-off Teen Nick in 2009. In a statement, the network said, quote, Viacom-CBS condemns bigotry of any kind. We categorically denounce any forms of anti-Semitism. And finally, number 1, Tom Bergeron. Tom Bergeron hosted the hit show Dancing with the Stars since it started in 2005. But that all changed in 2020 when he was abruptly fired. Since then, he has given more details, and it's clear that he and production butted heads. In one interview, he admitted that he saw it coming and was not shocked when he was fired. This is because he had spoken up against the things he disagreed with, to the dismay of the show. Bergeron said, quote, the show had changed a lot for me starting in early 2008. The show I left was not the show that I loved. We had very clear, sometimes public differences of opinion about the new showrunner and some of the execs, and happily, I was at a point in my life and career where I didn't have to just shut up and take it. Although he never got into specifics, it was rumored that a huge point of contention between him and the show were the political stars that came on. He previously shared his disagreement with President Trump's former press secretary, Sean Spicer, coming on the show.